After Jay found Taehaa on the rooftop, he could tell that Taehaa had finally made up his mind. Jay had been hoping that wouldn't happen, but the look on Taeha's face made it clear that his decision was already settled. Taehaa calmly told him to go ahead and say what he wanted to say. He then brought up something Jay had told him before. Jay had once said that first loves never worked out, and he had also warned that hurting someone would eventually come back to haunt the person responsible. Those words had stayed with Taehaa, leaving a deeper impression on him than Jay probably realized. Before Jay left, Taehaa wanted to hear the story behind it. He asked Jay about his first love. Jay was caught off guard by the question. If they weren't going to look at their relationship as employer and employee, then he could at least treat this as advice from a younger brother to an older one. After all, Jay had gone out of his way to worry about Taehaa. Still, Jay didn't have much reason to hide the past anymore. It had happened a long time ago, so talking about it wasn't particularly difficult. He had also watched Taehaa dig himself deeper and deeper into trouble while trying to win over that strict Ajuma. Jay then began remembering when it had happened. He had been around Taeha's age at the time, and during that period, he had nearly lost his job. His memories immediately took him back to the incident. Jay was standing among a group of people when a woman confronted him. She reminded him that he had been the one who rejected her. Jay couldn't believe what he was hearing. The woman accused him of being the shameless one. According to her, Jay had been the person who clung to her and became obsessed with her, repeatedly telling her that he liked her, but Jay remembered the situation very differently. This was his first job, and overnight, everything had been turned upside down. He had gone from being the guy who rejected an employee to becoming the supposed who couldn't handle rejection, and threw a tantrum over it. Jay simply laughed it off. Rotten luck was nothing new for him anyway. For some reason, though, things still managed to work out. He didn't get fired in the end. Unfortunately, keeping his job didn't mean the situation was over. Instead, Jay became everyone's favorite person to hate, and his workplace certainly didn't make things any easier. At one point, someone ordered him to move an entire pile of things by himself. Jay looked at everything he was expected to carry and wondered if they seriously expected him to do all of it alone. The answer was obvious. Jay couldn't help wondering what kind of glorious future he had imagined when he first threw himself into this miserable working life. Looking back at it now, he almost felt like he should have simply stayed in the service. Then, just as he was struggling with the work, someone suddenly spoke up. Mikasa had noticed what was happening. She couldn't believe they were making Jay do all of it alone, especially under the heat. This wasn't even his job. Jay admitted that technically she was right, but inside he was far more confused about something else. Mikasa didn't waste any time arguing. She simply told Jay to let go and offered to help him carry everything. If he tried moving all of it by himself, he would probably be there for the entire day. Before Jay could stop her, Mikasa began picking things up. Jay warned her that some of it would probably be too heavy for her, but Mikasa didn't seem bothered. As Jay watched her, he began to realize that she had some serious fire in her. That was how they first met. Instead, it was simply their own miserable excuse for a first meeting. Later, the two of them sat together at a street-side restaurant. Mikasa asked if everyone hates him. He explained that he would have been lucky if being hated was all he had to worry about. His job was still on the line. Mikasa immediately reacted to that. She remarked that the world wasn't just full of crazy bastards. There were plenty of crazy women too. Jay couldn't help noticing one thing about her. She swore a lot. That realization made him laugh quietly to himself. Mikasa noticed his reaction and wondered why he was laughing. Jay didn't give her any serious reason. He simply found her easy to talk to. Mikasa confidently treated that as one of her best qualities. As they continued talking, Jay's eyes happened to drift toward her hand. There was a ring on her fourth finger. His first thought was obvious. Mikasa probably had a boyfriend. Someone like her would obviously have someone. Jay decided it would be better not to misunderstand the situation. He could simply finish eating and head home before she got the wrong idea. But Mikasa had already noticed where he was looking. She immediately told him that she was single. Mikasa explained that her ex had given it to her. She remembered him as a cheapskate who pinched every penny when it came to spending money on her. Yet the ring was one of the few expensive things he had ever given her. Even after they broke up, she had continued wearing it. Jay didn't know what to make of that. Mikasa simply pointed out that the ring itself hadn't done anything wrong. That answer completely broke Jay. He started laughing. Mikasa couldn't understand what was so funny and asked why he was laughing. Jay only laughed harder. He found her explanation genuinely hilarious. Mikasa reminded him that calling a woman hilarious could sound like an insult. Jay quickly clarified that he meant it as a compliment. After that, something between them gradually began to change. And before Jay even realized how far things had progressed, their relationship naturally became serious. At the time, Jay didn't think there was anything particularly unusual about it. To him, everything between them felt normal. He had dated women before, so he believed he knew what he was doing. Maybe that was because he had never truly liked anyone that much before. Maybe he was simply still too young. Or maybe he hadn't yet become the person he would eventually turn into. But there was one thing Jay knew for certain. He loved Mikasa. In his eyes, she was small, slender, and delicate. She was completely different from him. Soft, tender, fragile enough that it frightened him. There had been a time when Jay had thought of himself in much the same way. He had once believed his own innocence was harmless, before eventually realizing that it could become the very thing that destroyed avoid him. Mikasa eventually noticed another side of Jay. She told him that he was different from what he looked like. Despite his appearance, Jay was actually a gentleman. Jay wondered whether that was supposed to be a bad thing. Mikasa immediately denied it. In fact, she admitted that compared with all the guys she had dated before, Jay was the biggest and very much her type. But that wasn't what surprised her. Looking at his face, she had expected him to be a little rougher. Instead, he was too gentle. Jay slowly began to understand what she meant. He could sense that Mikasa wanted something different from the way he naturally behaved. But even as he tried to understand her, he never completely grasped what she wanted. There was always a part of him that remained worried about her. While Mikasa seemed to want more intensity, Jay kept noticing how delicate she looked. The woman he loved was small and soft, and that made him instinctively careful. Even when she asked him for more, Jay couldn't completely shake that hesitation. He wondered whether he had some hidden preference for that kind of situation, but the answer was an emphatic no. If anything, he hated it. Still, Jay eventually convinced himself that his own feelings didn't matter as much as hers. She liked it, she wanted it, and all he had to do was give her what she wanted. The more he did it, the more accustomed he became. Jay told himself that he wasn't losing anything. He liked her, and she liked what they were doing. There was no reason for it to break him. That was what he kept telling himself, even while something inside him was slowly breaking anyway. Afterward, the two of them were lying together when Mikasa suddenly asked Jay whether he had ever thought about getting a tattoo. Jay was surprised by the question. A tattoo? Mikasa said she thought one would suit him. Jay asked if she really thought so. That small suggestion stayed in his mind. Not long afterward, Jay found himself sitting inside a tattoo shop. The tattoo artist looked at the design and asked whose name it was. Jay calmly explained that it was his girlfriend's name. The tattoo artist was impressed by what he considered a serious display of devotion. Then he asked the obvious question. What would Jay do if they broke up? Jay didn't hesitate. They wouldn't. The tattoo artist had heard that answer from plenty of people before, but Jay genuinely believed it. For him, there was no possibility that the relationship would end. Later, when Mikasa discovered what Jay had actually done, she was stunned. She couldn't believe it. Jay had seriously gotten her name tattooed on himself. Mikasa immediately explained that Jay had misunderstood her completely. That wasn't what she meant. She couldn't believe how innocent he was. But Jay had taken her words seriously, because, to him, their relationship meant everything. As time passed, Jay's behavior became increasingly reckless. Deep down, he wanted to live recklessly. He wanted to become a complete wreck with nowhere left to fall. Part of him wanted Mikasa to look at what he had become and hurt because of it. It was a painfully naive way of thinking. Jay somehow believed that the wounds he inflicted on himself could eventually wound her too. But they couldn't. Mikasa was unusually happy. She told Jay that the night had been amazing. She had never been that satisfied before, and she said she had a little surprise waiting for him. Jay had no idea what she was talking about. Then she handed him something. It was a wedding invitation. Jay looked at it. The words on the invitation slowly registered. Mikasa was getting married to someone else.